My Indiana double is my right butt cheek got chewed out by Bob Knight. My left butt cheek got chewed out by Tony Stewart. And that's my version of the Indiana double.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. California's Kevin Harvick does it. Straight making right there. You're the man.
Hey everybody, welcome to Kevin Harvick's Happy Hour presented by NASCAR on Fox. I'm Kaitlyn Vincie, and we're doing things a little different today because Kevin is at his charity golf tournament, so he can't be here today. But Mamba Smith is here, and so too is the Bob Pockrass.
Go.
I am so excited about this because we, of course, all know him as a NASCAR insider. He's our Fox Sports teammate, and this was my idea to have you on, and I'm so stoked this actually came to fruition. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's the perfect day for me to be on because I wouldn't be playing in Kevin's golf tournament.
Right.
I wasn't born with patience or coordination, so I don't golf. I don't do golf.
I don't
Just
believe
sorry,
that.
I don't know.
You definitely have
golf.
patience. He has a lot of patience.
Yeah, but he has coordination. I've seen him on the kickball field. We were about this far away from winning the
tournament?
Coil of Joy Kickball Classic this year.
You guys were on the same team?
We're on the same team. We're on Bubba Wallace's team.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
cute.
I almost collided with Bubba, and that
you?
was a little scary because I thought, oh no, I'm gonna knock him out of the seat. He's gonna get injured playing kickball,
you,
and I would
'cause
never
of
hear
Bob.
about it. That's right.
Because of Bob.
That's right.
Of Bob.
That's funny. Well, I know you're obviously had a super busy couple of weeks, and you were here in Charlotte for all the events, of course, the Charlotte Roval race. And we want to talk to you about the season we've had so far because nobody knows the storylines and the sport of NASCAR better than our man right here. So what were your biggest takeaways, I guess, from the Charlotte Roval? What'd you think of?
Ooh. My biggest takeaway is that when you look at the round of 8, 7 of the top 7 drivers in the regular season standings are still around.
That's right.
So Brad Keselowski was 8th. He's been out for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the top 7 and Joey Logano, a 2-time Cup champion. So there's nobody in there that you're like, yeah, they're not going to advance. You've got the drivers who've been best all year
That's a good
who
point.
are going to be duking it out over the final 8 races, or our final 4 races.
You say Joey Logano, but by this point, we'll know.
We will know. So we will preface by saying we're filming on a Monday.
Yeah.
We don't know the status of the appeal
Right.
for the 48 team. That will be a story, obviously.
I want to know, what do you think about the appeal, and how do these processes usually take place?
Well, how are they going to tip the scales of the appeal onto their favor? Oh, how about that? Do you like that?
I do like that. Bob's got jokes.
Yeah, I got. It's going to be tough. I mean, if you don't make weight, really, your arguments are that something that there was crash damage, and they give you 17 pounds pretty much for that reason. And I don't know that you saw 17 pounds come off the car during the race. You can argue that they didn't follow their processes, and they said that they allowed them to put fuel in the car. They actually let them purge the water system and put water back in the car. Or you can argue that the scales were off and everybody else passed. So I think it's going to be a tough appeal. And as I said, many people seeing this now, we might already know the result.
Yep.
But I just think it's going to be tough to win that appeal.
For people who maybe aren't familiar with the whole appeal process, obviously it's been around for quite some time. What is it? How does it kind of take place? Can you walk us through how it goes down?
It's a little bit different for a disqualification appeal.
Okay.
A disqualification appeal is just one hearing in front of one person. You know, usually we hear about parts appeals where it's 3 people panel, and then you have kind of a final appeal to the final appeals officer. Right. A DQ is meant to have an expedited appeal. Obviously, they have to do it quick, so it's just one person who hears it and makes the decision. So that can sometimes weigh in the favor of the team, and maybe sometimes weigh in favor of NASCAR. That that it's just one person's opinion after hearing the evidence. And what they do is that they bring each side in the room. You can't have lawyers or anything like that.
It's not federal court,
but the team they can send. They can send like a summary before the appeal of like, this is our argument. And then the team will go first. Actually, NASCAR will go first. Team will go second. NASCAR will gets a chance to rebut. The panelists can ask questions of the teams. The panelists can choose to call witnesses. Like if they're like, oh, well, that's interesting. Can we get this person? And anybody with a hard card, I think they can say, hey, you need to call in. I want to know the information.
Yeah, that's
I don't think that usually happens. But the teams can bring people with them to testify for them, but there's no cross-examination from the other side.
Okay.
Okay.
It's an interesting process.
It is.
I didn't really know that.
It's a lot of moving pieces there for sure. I know you kind of like these a little more, right? Aren't these kind of stories more interesting to you? Or it's...
I mean, heck, they are interesting, and I think NASCAR has started having the appeal panel or the panelist kind of explain why they made the decision. For a long time, we were just like, "This
Here's
is
the answer."
Here's the answer. There still isn't a lot of depth to those decisions. It's not like court where you have a bunch of precedents, right? Where you can say, well, this is what you decided in this case, so this is how you should decide here. But at least there is a little bit of a reason given for why they made the decision.
Due process.
Yeah. I remember back in the day when we had Race Hub, we would camp out there for the day and be doing live hits as like things were happening at the R&D
really?
center. Yes. Yes, I do recall this. So will you go there to wait for
I won't go there. They don't. Now I think they let the teams kind of come in the back. They don't have to come in through the
covert.
front.
Bob's not invited
They actually
anymore.
used to after we used to stake out there in front, and then they actually put us in a room in the R&D center, and they gave the team the option to come in after the appeal was heard to address the media, and so few were doing it that it just didn't really seem to be all that conducive. I think with the rise of social media, they know that the teams can put out kind of their side after it happens.
Too bad we can't have a live stream of that.
No, that'd be funny.
The appeal cam.
I do want to
know.
know. That's so funny. I do want to know, Bob. So the Charlotte Roval, it's how long? It's been around for
4 years?
No,
Six
years
okay.
now. Yeah,
There you
okay.
go.
Yeah.
So we changed because for multitude of reasons, but it's become very entertaining, and I think it throws a different wrench in the whole pot there for the drivers. We changed the course this year. Was everyone receptive of that? It seemed like they were at the beginning. I know they never like it. They never like any change, but it seemed like it was okay after we got going.
Yeah, and I don't know whether that was just because drivers adapted or whether so many of the playoff drivers were more in just don't mess up mode, right? The only driver you really had who had to push it was Tyler Reddick, and Daniel Hemrick learned how hard he had to push it, right? So I think if you had more drivers who were potentially having to come through the field, there could have been maybe a little more chaos than what you saw. I think the drivers were happy that NASCAR made the change to the front stretch chicane, to the curbs and the front stretch chicane to kind of soften those blows. A little bit of angst, right? But that there was no practice, or you went into a kind of a race with a somewhat significant change there in that turn. But, it seemed that everybody adapted. You had some penalties called early for cutting the course, but it seemed like everybody kind of figured it out as they went along.
So we were talking obviously to Kevin earlier today for the other show about Kyle Larson, and once again seeing such a dominant performance out of that team. Just saw that a couple weeks ago at Bristol. So we asked him this, and I'm curious your thoughts. Do you think he's emerged as the favorite for the championship?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
I mean, he has 6 wins. Nobody else has more than 3.
Right.
I think, even Cliff prefaced it by saying he has respect for everybody, but he felt like their biggest challenges themselves, right? Like that they know that if they come and do what they're capable of doing, they're going to be very, very tough to beat. And, I asked Larson, is there anybody else like that? And, kind of said Denny has been the driver he felt has had as consistent of a speed as they have throughout the year. I think a lot of people look at Christopher Bell and obviously his strength at a track like Phoenix. But, I think week in and week out, when you say who are going to be the fastest cars, Larson is there every week.
Who's now the round 8? All these guys are really good, right? But who is your dark horse when you look at the round 8 to get to the final.
And we know this is tricky because we don't actually know who's
Yeah,
in.
yeah. It's kind of 9 guys.
But I guess where it stands now.
Yeah.
Where I would say it's Logano because he was out, right, and now he got in, and I mean he's 2-time champ, so he knows how to. He's been used to these pressure situations. Certainly they ran well at the Roval, but here's the thing. I always doubt Logano, and he always proves me wrong.
Yeah.
So I still think, to me, he's the dark horse. And he's the guy who wasn't in the top 7 in regular season points, who's still alive.
It's going to be very interesting as we get ready to embark on another round. So, Bob, you've obviously been covering this season the entire time since it kicked off. It feels like a year ago. What do you think has been one of the best stories of the year so far? The charters?
I mean, that's more been a mess than the best stories. I mean, I would say. I mean, we talk about Kyle Larson, and I think the whole Indy 500 was one that was just so captivating.
It was.
Doing the double, and then like you couldn't have predicted that it would be that. Like you couldn't predict that the same storm that ruined his day at Indianapolis came to Charlotte and ruined it here, right? Like that's just, and then he goes back to Indianapolis and wins.
And then
comes back to
Charlotte and wins. That's good. We didn't mention that. Yeah.
That's like Redemption City twice.
I love
right?
that.
And
so
I think that saga, and you look at, he potentially cost him the regular season championship, right?
Technically, yes.
Not being at Charlotte. Now he will point to other things, but certainly if he had raced that race, he probably would have won the regular season championship. Will he need those 5 points going forward? He shouldn't, but if he does, man, that just brings that story. He wants that story to go away, and that story keeps cropping up again and again and again.
It's kind of crazy. We don't really talk about it. He almost won the regular season championship with one less race.
Yeah.
Like that's how good of a year they actually have had. And we don't talk about it enough because it didn't really matter because he was so close, but like he's been probably the most dominant car all year, and we don't really talk about him like that, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you look at other storylines, Stuart Haas has been a storyline this year. The fact that they're closing at the end of the year for the most part, I mean, they'll still have one Cup car under the rebranded Haas factory team, but just the Chase Briscoe winning that race and keeping that kind of team was something to race for up until, I mean, they still have stuff to race for, but they're not racing for a championship now. But just that team, how they've worked through everything going on this year, where all the drivers have landed, for the most part for next year, still to be announced. But I think that, that storyline, it's not best in a good way, but it's certainly been one that we've been watching throughout the year.
Yeah, it has been interesting seeing all the parts and pieces to that story falling into place. So there's a number of changes on the horizon for the sport, new tracks coming in, different things in the works for 2025. What's something that excites you the most when you think about the future of NASCAR?
Well, I mean, I'm excited about going to Mexico City.
Yeah.
I went to those races in the mid 2000s, the now Xfinity Series races, and I loved it down there. I mean, I thought it was fun. They were exciting races. The fans were so passionate. The atmosphere was great. It was something that I enjoyed, and I'm certainly looking forward to seeing the Cup cars race down there and seeing. I mean, Daniel Suarez racing. I don't think people realize just how big that is going to be, and who knows who'll be in the Xfinity Series race there, who might get rides for that race as far as drivers who the Mexican fans will be passionate about.
Yeah.
That's going to be great. I'm looking forward to that. Bob, if you could pick any place to take the Cup cars in the world,
where are you going?
Where do you want to go?
Where do I want to go?
Where do you want to take them?
Oh,
what
my
country?
goodness.
What
my
continent?
goodness.
Where do you want to take them?
Where do I want to take them?
Because we've talked about this on the show a couple different times, and like I'm a big fan of going to Australia and doing like a big race with the V8 supercars and converging those two cultures.
Remember when I said Bowman Gray and you guys both laughed at me? And I said it for the Clash. And sure enough, I was right. Just want to throw that out there.
The question is overseas?
Yeah, well,
Anywhere.
I mean,
You
look,
could
I
say
think
Mars.
I was going to say
mean.
Montreal. Like I would love to see
Montreal, yeah.
the Cup cars in Montreal.
That's a good
Part of me would kind of like to see him at Le Mans just because of the historic
that'd be kind of cool.
part of it. But another part of me would kind of love to see them either like at a Monaco or Abu Dhabi.
Oh, Monaco. Yes, let's go to Monaco.
Big F1 circuits.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Good ideas here coming from Bob.
Like,
on
I never
potential,
really thought about it like that.
Potential
I like what Bob
tracks.
said.
Yeah, I like what he said. Okay, so that's some of the storylines and things from the year. Now we're going to transition into talking all about who is Bobby P, the man behind the legend, I guess I would say. Because I want to take a moment to praise our friend here.
Yeah.
And you know how everyone feels about you, but you really are the hardest working journalist in this entire industry. I admire your work ethic so much. I don't know where it came from. I would love to find out because it's very unique. So I want to start at the very beginning of your young life. So I know when you went to college, you actually majored in business. Is that right?
I started as a business major.
As a business
moved
major.
to journalism.
Okay. So when you were young, before you even went to college, were you interested in sports? Did you kind of always have a calling towards this or what?
Yeah, so I think when I was a kid, there was a Super Bowl and I found this like little report that I did pre-Super Bowl with all the stats and my pick and who I thought was going to win and why I thought this quarterback. I want to say it may have been the Steelers and Cowboys. I'm not sure. So I've always been interested in sports. I've always been interested in writing. I thought business would be a better path maybe for me, like to run your own business. I thought would be cool. But I, worked at my high school paper, my high school yearbook, and soon I realized I did not want to take business classes at Indiana University. So I moved to journalism and, getting cussed out by Bob Knight, when you're a junior or senior in college, that's my Indiana double is my right butt cheek got chewed out by Bob Knight. My left butt cheek got chewed out by Tony Stewart. And that's my version of the Indiana double.
That's amazing. Oh, bless.
Why did Bob Knight chew you out?
So I was stringing for UPI wire service, and they were doing a national story on free throw shooting.
Okay.
And IU was bad that year in free throw shooting. And this was a year they had like 4 freshmen on the team, and he had just gotten the stat sheet and he was looking at it. And it was my turn to ask a question. I said, Coach, you have a lot of freshmen on the team. I know that in practice, usually during breaks in practice is when they practice free throws. Maybe with all the freshmen on the team, have you had to spend more time just working on plays and stuff and maybe not have as much time to practice free throws? And he was like, maybe we haven't practiced an effing free throw since effing's first day of practice. They walked out.
Great. Thanks for the quote.
Yes. And so that was my Bob Knight moment.
Wow. That's a little harsh there.
You know what Bob Knight is, right? Okay.
Yeah. That would be intimidating, I think, a little bit.
But Indiana is 6-0 in football, by the way.
There you go.
Right. So, so hopefully
baby steps.
That continues.
Yes. So at least, we're basketball school, Bob Knight and everything. But hey, how about Hoosier football?
Yeah.
But you were asking about why my work ethic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, my parents grew up in the mid-30s in New York City. And so I think that's where it comes from.
Your parents.
You have to work hard to get everything because you never know when it's going to be taken away.
Right. Yeah. That's a very true statement. So out of school, you worked for the Marion, which was an Indiana paper kind of covering the Indy 500.
Yeah, I did a summer working for them.
So what was that experience like?
So that was mainly like the Marion, Indiana paper did a special section on the Indy 500. So they just hired me. That sports editor had gone to Indiana. So he was like a few years ahead of me. He didn't have a reporter who could go to the Speedway every day and write these stories for the special section. So he just hired me to write stories for a special section, but it was a Gannett newspaper. So my stories were being run all over
That's cool.
all over the nation. And so it was just cool to be able to cover the Indy 500 at that time. So,
But it was a small time frame,
Yes,
right?
it
And
was
then
just-
you
it was
didn't
just
have
a month.
You didn't have a job after that.
yeah, just a
And-
month. It was just like, hey, we're going to hire you for a month.
Right. And I read after that, you sent out like almost 300 resumes. And when he would get rejection letters, because I guess they still sent those at the time, you would put them on your door
Yeah.
or your wall
Yeah, you had
as motivation.
Right. Yeah. So like they're
Billboard
my
material.
and this is kind of before and after that, Marion experienced that throughout the last 6 months of college, you would just you go and you copy your best stories and a resume and mail it to the sports editor. And there's a
Okay.
big book that you could buy that had the names of all the sports editors and,
Wow.
and every editor at every newspaper. And you would just send and hope that,
So you got a lot of rejections back?
it was nice to get rejected. At least you know that they got it, right?
You gotta
that's-
know.
Silver lining. Look at this guy. Like,
So,
I knew
but-
you actually got. You just throw it
But
away.
yeah, so no, I would just put each one up on the wall and say, okay,
Keep trying.
keep trying.
So
That's
in a world where kids and people are always trying to figure out their path, what is the best advice that you would give to not just maybe a journalist, but maybe to someone who's going to come up to you and be like, hey man, like how can I figure out what I want to do and how do I get it going?
Yeah, well, you get a lot of people who are like, hey, how do I get into NASCAR? I want to how do I work for a NASCAR team? And I always tell them, and working my experience, I worked 12 years at the Daytona newspaper, covered some NASCAR, but I covered high schools, I covered colleges, I covered everything. I mean, I covered Little League, I covered high school rodeo.
Wow.
I mean, I did. I mean, the American Gladiators came to town. That old show, I covered that. Got to cover World Cup soccer though, because they were training at the time for the '94 World Cup back there in Daytona and playing in Orlando. So I would say, don't feel like you have to, even if whatever sport you want to cover, don't feel like you have to do that solely right away. That if you find a job where maybe that is just part of it, but you're getting all these other experiences can really be beneficial, because a lot of teams, a lot of people in marketing, they look for people who have not just experience in the sport, but experiences outside the sport so that they can bring ideas.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Daytona Beach News Journal. You got in with them in 1991. So that's how long Bob's been covering NASCAR, which is a significant amount of time. What are some of your early memories from the NASCAR initial days?
Well, I mean, got to see the whole growth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in the 90s is when the big boom in NASCAR was happening. I mean, they couldn't add seats at Daytona International Speedway fast enough, to keep up with the demand. And it was, I lived in Indianapolis, so I kind of knew what big racing was, and I could see the growth of NASCAR, right in front of me. And so to me, that's kind of the biggest memories. And you just had so many, the Dale Earnhardt, will he win the Daytona 500 storyline was there every year, right? And until 98. And then you had the whole safety revolution after Dale's death. And that was huge as far as the sport was concerned. And so you saw the sport grow from a regional sport to a national sport, and all the great things and the headaches that went with it. And you saw the rise of money in the sport, and you saw small teams and teams, people who've been around the sport for decades just get, weren't able to compete anymore. So it's really been an interesting experience, but some things stay the same, because I think the first Daytona 500, I think I wrote about Bill Elliott not playing well with his teammates in 1992.
Okay.
And we still write about drivers not playing well with
their
teammates in 2024.
That's so funny.
Not many people have had that seat for that amount of time to see the
It's incredible
evolution. Yeah.
to be able to see it all. And I mean, a lot of the people that in the industry, that have been around that long, they're on the mechanic side. You know what I mean? They're in the front office. They're with a team. So to have a perspective like that, what has been one of the things that you've covered, like an event or a driver or a series of things that you covered that stand out and you're like, man, that was a really cool moment?
Well, I mean, Dale Jr. winning at Daytona in 2001 was happy and sad and cool and just such an emotional moment for, I think, everyone who followed the sport, who's involved in the sport. It just was an amazing, iconic moment that I think would be hard to match, just because it just showed the power of sports.
Yeah.
Then look, Tony Stewart, the Tony Stewart Carl Edwards battles certainly were great. That's in his championship season where he says he's not going to be a contender. I remember him telling us that. We're like, you didn't include yourself on the list. Well, no, I'm not going to be a contender. And then he goes out and wins the championship.
It's Tony Stewart things.
Yeah, does Tony Stewart things. Speaking of the drivers, all of them respect you and like you. They are very receptive to you anytime you come around. What has that been like for you? Because that is really hard to achieve, that level of credibility and respect from them. They're a bit of a tough crowd.
Yeah, I mean, and it can be awkward at times. It can be adversarial at times. And there are times where, they'll say like, look, I can't say anything, or I don't want to talk. And that's fine. It's just my job to come up and stick a microphone in their face and ask. And it has changed over the years, right? Because before, in the 1990s, you could tell a driver and say, if you want to reach your fans, you need to go through me or the media, right, to reach your fans. And now drivers and teams can reach the fans directly through social media. So it has changed like a little bit of that dynamic. And you just have to try to say, hey, you try to ask questions to try to bring more out of them, to give more context than maybe you can get on a social media post.
Yeah. Have you given yourself time at all to recognize what you have become and what you mean to the industry and the people? But a lot of people don't, and you're so into your work, and you're here and then back home in New York and all the things. So I just wonder if you ever really sat down and been like, man, this.
I mean, look, do I know that there are teams that on their laptops on their race day laptops, they have a scroll down to click on my tweets and look at my timeline? Yes. The pressure.
Pretty neat.
Pressure. But I don't know, I always look at it and say, if I wasn't doing, somebody else would be doing it.
Not as well.
So that's the way I look at it. And thankfully, Fox gives me the outlet and the ability to do that. So, look, my whole goal is that people's discretionary time and their discretionary income are limited, right? I mean, we value all of the little time that we have to do things that aren't maybe just normal life. And we value that little extra money that we have to spend on the joys of life. And if I can help them understand the sport and help them make decisions of who to root for and whose merch to buy or who to root against or what race to go to or what race not to go to, like, that's a great responsibility. That's a great thing to be able to contribute to people's lives, and that's what drives me.
I love that. That is such great.
Does that get you?
That gets me going. All right, coach.
I mean, that's why I do it.
Yeah, that's great motivation that you have there for your reasoning behind it. Awesome. What has it been like, though, for you? Because you guys do the tweet ups every week.
Where did the tweet ups come from?
So the tweet ups came when Jeff Gluck and I were working at NASCAR C magazine, and we had got on Twitter like right when it started. Like, our bosses were like, "Hey, we think this might be a great way to connect with people." And I think Gluck was like, "Hey, I don't have an assignment during this Xfinity Series race. I'm going to sit in the stands. Hey, if anyone of my followers want to come and watch it with me, it's this general admission for Xfinity race." And so that's
fun.
Some people did that. And then he was like, hey, let's meet fans like a few hours before
Every
a
week.
race. Yeah. And so that's kind of where the tweet ups came from. And it's a great way to meet and talk to fans, meet people who are passionate about the sport, help talk to them. Like we find out what they're interested in, the topics, we often I say, hey, do you care about this topic or do you care about that topic? Or did you watch the race yesterday? And to get passionate fans' perspective of the sport is a great way to help us do our jobs.
Yeah.
So we get help doing our jobs, and people who do follow us, it's a community. And so they want to come over and say hello, and gives it that opportunity. And people get to meet each other that they follow or respond to on Twitter,
cool.
not just me or the other reporters that they get to see, but they get to meet people that maybe they've talked to just on social, and they get to put a face to a Twitter handle.
I love that investment in the fans. And that's really important relationship to have. And you're not afraid to hang out with the fans, even if it comes down to a foam party.
Hey, Party Bob.
Foam Bob, you're not afraid to get in there with them. I mean, you're notorious for this now. The clips and photos that emerge from the foam parties with Bob are pretty epic.
It must have come from his Indy 500 days. It must have come from being in the mosh pit.
I have a lot of experience seeing lots of things at the Indy. Growing up,
lots of things. Pause.
I joke that apologies to my school teachers, but I learned more about the human body and biology and psychology, watching the Indianapolis 500 from turn one as a teenager as I did in any class. So can I say that? Looking forward to maybe being there next year.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
So the Indy 500 being on Fox. So that will be exciting. But look, it's always fun to hang out with the fans. Actually, I was running Fox's Instagram story at Bristol, and they were like, hey, we need a post to kind of end the story. I was tired. I was like, I didn't know what I was going to do. And then somebody at Bristol was like, hey, we're going to the foam party. Does anybody want to go? I was like, well, this would be a nice closing slide to the Instagram story for the NASCAR on Fox page. And all of a sudden it created a tradition.
There you go. It sure did create a tradition.
Listen, speaking of traditions, there's a tradition in NASCAR of drivers fighting at least once a year. And Bob, your involvement of this fight from North Wilkesboro, the All-Star race, might be more important than the actual fight itself.
Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
So Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Kyle Busch going at it. You're right there.
What was that moment like?
Well, it was so funny because Ricky at the media, he gets out of the care center and he's like, we're like, what are you going to do about it? And he's like, well, come over after the race and watch. So, and so it's like an invitation.
Like, don't tempt me with a good time.
And so, of course, we go to Kyle at his car because we don't know where Ricky's going to be.
Right.
And we ask Kyle a few questions as he's walking back to the hauler. And then we see Ricky standing there in those incredible shorts, amazing right? Shorts. Like we made. Yes, he did. And, we're standing there and they're just kind of talking. I'm just kind of standing there. All right, wait. And then, you could tell there's fireworks going off in the background. And all of a sudden, Ricky just slung, and after a little bit, you were thinking, oh, okay, they're just going to argue it out. Like there's not going to be
some climactic
moment. And then there was. And funny thing is, Fox got me this little camera and it's on a swivel because you can hit a button so that it comes to selfie mode. And Kyle Busch gets thrown back into me and it spins into me and catches my face, I guess, at the perfect moment.
Yes, at the definite perfect moment.
And the thing is, the producers at Fox are like, send us whatever video you have. So we're in North Wilkesboro. It ain't the fastest internet speed. So I didn't have a time to even look at it. So I just sent them what I had. So I had no clue. And I had no clue what was on there until
it was screenshot across the world, right?
Yes, until my face was screenshot. A meme had been made.
Oh, it took
several memes had been made from
minutes.
that event.
Yeah. I mean, that went on for 2 weeks. because it was All-Star race and then 600, so we're all here. The only other story that was higher than that was Larson doing the double. I mean, Bob, you really broke the internet.
Broke
You
the
crushed
internet.
it.
Well,
Bob
it
does that
was,
all the time.
sometimes like, look, you kind of get a feeling of, when things are going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you get a feeling of, and this is one like, look, Ricky Stenhouse isn't a guy who normally backs down.
Yeah.
And, the what you thought was he had 2 hours to get calm about it before that altercation.
We've talked about, Kevin, how hard the job is.
Oh, yes.
On TV or
Mhm.
media in different aspects. Bob, what's the hardest part of your job?
The hardest part of our job right now is to be fair in the 24-second news cycle.
Yeah.
That is social media, right? We, coming from the newspaper world where it's a 24-hour news cycle to now where things are immediate and stories evolve. I look at our social feeds as almost like a TV report, where it's breaking news and that news evolves throughout, and you're trying to always balance what you have learned versus giving the other side time to respond. And your first instinct previously was, okay, my deadline is 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. at night, and now your deadline is like a minute away.
Yeah.
So I think to us, the biggest challenge is just trying to be fair and trying to recognize the impact of every social media post. Because you put something out there and you think it might be a little bit either innocuous or vague or not a big deal, and then all of a sudden it becomes one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think people don't realize just how tough it is. And the season is very long, and there are so many storylines across all the series happening at all points in time. You can never really log off. Like especially Bob, you're dialed in, I swear, all the time.
Yeah,
and
4 series.
That's got to be tough after
Where's
a
my
while.
phone? Where's my phone?
I know.
I have my phone somewhere.
I know.
Where's
What's
my
happening?
phone?
Something
Come
could
on.
be happening right now. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's hard.
Yeah. And I think, look, sports is designed to help you forget about things in life, but there is an industry where it is
Your life.
It is lots of people's lives, and sports enhances the lives of the fans, right? And so you know that you can impact those things. And I think to me, that's the biggest challenge, is to be fair and honest and try to understand that there could be times where you post things that are going to impact people's lives, and you know that you should post them because that's information and that's the way people understand things, or people need to know, or you feel like they need to know about those things. But that it can be sensitive, and that it can cause a lot of headaches. It could cost people jobs, right?
Yeah.
In some ways, I don't know that one tweet could, but certainly a storyline can impact the way people go about doing things.
Yeah. Something that's always in the middle of that is silly season. It's been wild this year because it's been early. And Michael McDowell started it when he announced he was going to Spire, just threw everything up, I feel like, and then the charters too. So when you look at silly season and what's left, what are we thinking? What is there any other big news that
I think you look at Front Row in 2311, they intend to run 3 cars. They say they're going to run 3 cars. What's going to happen, right? So we still don't know with the way the litigational, how it will proceed and how they will respond to it. So I still think that Zane Smith is the leader for the 3rd Front Row car. I still think that Riley Herbst is the leader for the 3rd 2311 car. Still think that Ryan Preece is likely for a 3rd RFK car, potentially. Do they get lease a charter or somehow get a charter? One of the Rick Ware charters is a possibility. And then is Corey LaJoie the leader for the ride that he has right now in the 51? I would say yes, but again, if there is someone with more sponsorship or someone else becomes available, that can change things. But that's where I see it standing right now.
Number of dominoes still need to fall here in the silly season conversation. So final question for me is about you outside of all this stuff. I know you like running. I know that you're a vegan. He has great skin. I think whatever he's doing, I need to be doing. Tell us all your secrets. Who are you outside the track, Bobby P?
I'm a little bit of the guy you see in the media center, a little bit of the guy that you see at the phone party, right? I have a silly side to me, and it's funny because people always thought I was just so serious. But at the racetrack, look, the drivers are busy. I'm busy. It's like I'm somebody like, hey, let's do a job. I don't need a whole lot of chit chat. I have a question, you have an answer. Let's
do the deal.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think I'm a little bit more relaxed, maybe hopefully a little bit more kind of fun loving and everything. And I think I think that's a great thing about social media, that you can show some of that. I like to read. I'm a big newsletter. I'm very much reading various newsletters on politics and media and business and everything. So I consume a lot of media, partly because I'm interested in topics, and partly because I also know that can put for ideas of how to deliver information to people with the way they take in information these days.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
You do have a great sense of humor. A lot of people don't know that. He's real quick-witted.
Listen, Bob, if Bob, I've been in the media center more recently.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, America, that the media center is literally, Bob is the king of the media center. Okay, when I say the king, I mean something will be going on and it'll come across the airwaves, and Bob will say some sly remark, some sly joke, and he's to himself, but just loud enough so you can hear it, and you're like, did you just? He's like, what? And I'm like, Bob, God Almighty. So Bob, for that, sense of humor is amazing. And my last question.
Hey, can I say?
Yeah.
And they may.
Yeah, you can say whatever you want.
Rick Hendrick comes in, and I'm like, gosh, he had a bigger entourage than J.D. Vance at the race yesterday. And it just came out, and I was just like, oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. That is wild.
That's what I'm talking about. No one
no one else could probably get away with it.
Well, you also don't expect it. You just don't expect it from him. But my last question, so what part of New York do you live in?
I live in Harlem, northern part of Harlem.
Northern part of Harlem.
Yeah.
Do your neighbors, because you've been there for a while, do your neighbors know what you do with in the NASCAR and the racing space? And what is that kind of reception like? Because Harlem.
Well, one of my neighbors is actually friends with another NASCAR reporter who they know. So so they knew about it. They knew who I was. And so sometimes they ask me some questions about it. I wouldn't say many other of my neighbors in my building know. The people, some of the people who work there know, because they see me leave at 4 or 5 a.m. every Thursday and come rolling in sometime on Monday.
Yeah,
and they're
what's
like,
this guy doing?
Yeah, why do you leave on the weekends? Where are you going? People are here on the weekends, and so
that's funny.
So we talk a little bit about what I do. They're like, where are you going this week? So, but I did get recognized in New York the other day. I was at a concert. After a concert, somebody did and I had posted on Instagram that I was at the concert. I hadn't posted on X, so maybe they saw that.
Wow.
Yeah, so there are NASCAR fans in New York. I've actually went to an apartment in New York where people gathered to watch NASCAR races.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Of course you were recognized, because you are awesome, and we appreciate you so much joining us on the show today. Not only are you an amazing journalist, you're such a great person, and I enjoy your friendship and you being a colleague to us. So thanks so much for being here. Yeah, this is one of my favorite episodes ever. Bobby P.
Brother Bob in the house,
Brother Bob.
ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, closers, please continue to subscribe on YouTube wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review. Thanks again to Mr. Bob Pockrass. We'll see you guys next time.